Hello, ladies.
Hi,
Hello.
Camille.
Hello. I know it's like, how am I being cheery? We're kind of in an interesting time right now, aren't we? So I want to just start by saying my name is Camille Tucker. I'm the co-writer of the Clark Sisters, First Ladies of Gospel. And today we have with us Christine Swanson, the director of the film, and the incomparable Miss Aunjanue Ellis, who plays Dr. Maddie Moss Clark. She's such a beautiful and amazing actress and talented, powerful actress. And I know she's humble too. She's shaking that head. But it's just good to be here with you ladies talking. And I don't know about you, but I have my little tea. But I don't even want to say that we're going to spill any tea or drink any tea. But it's nice to have a little something to drink. But I wanted to start this talk because, first of all, we know that many fans of the Clark sisters, and we just want to first give props and the praise due to the Clark sisters for their legendary career, the sacrifices they've made, the love that they've poured into the ministry that they've done, and that we could be a part of helping to tell their story. And so what I'd like to know first and ask you guys, because I'm sure the fans are interested, is just about your artistry. Because I know for me, I have an interesting story of why I first started to write. For me, I lived in Compton, California, and I went to, my school burned down when I was in the second grade. And I ended up getting bused and going to a predominantly white affluent school in Palos Verdes, California. And it was a culture shock. And I was profoundly aware of my Blackness after going to this school. I experienced racism, micro and macroaggressions. And that was when I started to write. And that was like second or third grade. And then when I started to read people like Gwendolyn Brooks and Maya Angelou, it just continued on like, oh, there's other women who have voices like Black women who are saying what I want to say, and I can say things too. So I would love to hear that story for both of you.
I grew up in the church, traditional Baptist church in Southwest Mississippi. And it was just a part of my culture to be in Easter plays and Christmas plays and blah, 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 blah. But it wasn't something, and, recitation of scripture, it was what you had to do. You didn't have a choice in the matter. So it was, I guess you would say,
No
choice
in the matter.
No choice. No choice. This is what you had to do. I guess that was my introduction to culture, to art.
Yeah. And that's fascinating because it's like a full circle moment. So we hear a lot of singers who started in the church, but to hear an actor say that your roots started with church plays and then to come back full circle and be playing. And from what I understand, this is the first biopic about a gospel group or a specifically religious figure. I actually read that someplace. So I think that's interesting that that's where your roots were in church plays.
But I want to say something though. Like I from that experience, it was an introduction to culture and specifically Black culture, because that's the mecca, I believe, for Black art, period, hands down. Black performance. Mm-hmm. Real and not real, like that's the mecca of it. So that was my introduction, but there was nothing in that experience that made me go, oh, this makes me want to be an actor. Not at all.
Okay.
So it was somebody much further along in my life who said to me that they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I'm sure Camille and Christine, you can speak to that someone can have a vision for you that you may not see in your own estimation of who you are. And someone saw that in me and said, you need to go here, you need to go to graduate school, you need to do all these things. And I sort of stayed in that path. And from that, I'm sitting here talking to you right now. But it wasn't because of what I saw in myself. It was what someone else saw in me.
Which I think is so important when we think even when you think about invisible man, or that, you know, some people of color, we feel invisible, and that somebody sees you. Like when they say that line, I see you, and how important that is. So Christine, what about you?
I think it had something to do with the fact that I came into Blackness at the age of 8. So I lived in another country. I lived in Korea until I was 6. And then I lived on a military base for another 2 years in Florida. So, and that's like Florida culture. That's, you know, interesting in and of itself. And then my father and my mom and dad divorced. And my father ended up raising me and my brother. So he's a single Black man, raised 2 kids after a divorce. He retired from the military and took us to Detroit, which was his hometown. And I kind of landed in this very foreign place at that time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just learned English 2 years prior. And then when I landed in Detroit, I realized that there was this other language that I did not know. And I spent the next 2 years almost in utter silence because I couldn't communicate in the way that these other kids communicated. So I just observed, and I kind of took in a lot of things, and I was like an alien, like seeing something and experiencing something that was deeply profound. And I guess in hindsight, what it was is I was enmeshing myself into Black culture, like backwards, you know, not being born into it, but being brought into it. And then being accepted by people who are not responsible as my primary caregivers, who ended up raising me. And that goes beyond my own family members, but teachers and ministers and Sunday school teachers. And just that whole collective experience, it's just left, it left a mark in me in a way that I still cannot extinguish. And for me, the first time that I saw Black people on screen that looked like the Black people that I was around, it blew my mind. And it was To Sleep with Anger by Charles Bronson. And I thought, like, oh, I know people like that, you know, and then to see it magnified on the big screen like that, I was sold, right? And just paths that I took along the way afforded me an opportunity to learn and understand that there are people who are called filmmakers and storytellers who do this kind of work. And I just thought, I dreamed big for myself, and I thought, could I do that? Could I try that? And I just went on that path, and, you know, here I am today. It's a long path, but a meaningful one every step of the way, not knowing if this is indeed like what I can do or I should do. Even after finishing the Clark Sisters movie, not knowing if this is something I can do or I should do, but being challenged still to chase it, because there is something that I see in us as a people that I want to magnify and explore in this medium until I die. So that's how I came into it. I'm gonna still figure this out. I don't have all the pieces together perfectly, but part of what gives me joy is playing it out, you know, even if I land flat on my face, and I have.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have. I think being in this industry in film and TV is an endurance game. I mean, there's a whole story, and I want to ask you guys some questions, but what a lot of people don't know is, at least from in my part of this story, this project first came to me in 2005.
Wow.
And I was writing with a friend, my friend Sarah Finney Johnson, who's a showrunner of like Moesha and the Parkers, prolific TV writer, said, hey, Camille, you have more feature experience and I'm more TV. Come write with me on this project. And Sarah's amazing. And I love it to opportunity to write with her. And we went out and pitched it. And the project didn't sell in 2005. It was a different time. The marketplace wasn't right for it at that time. And so the project kind of went dormant, and every few years somebody would have some interest in it, but it didn't quite sell. And it wasn't until 2017 when one of the producers, Holly Carter, got together with Queen Latifah, that kind of became an igniter. And I think with their combined resources, the project finally ended up selling. I wrote the first few drafts of the script. Sarah actually couldn't continue with the project at that time. She was busy on the TV show, and I continued writing on it. So a lot of people don't know. I mean, what is that? That's 12 years. So it's like crazy to think, you know, and every few years I would talk to the Clark sisters, or we would go out and pitch it again, and it still wasn't happening. So I am also a professor of screenwriting, and I always tell my students, I'm like, this is the slow game. This is the, you know, this is the tortoise versus the hare. You have to have that patience and really want to do this. But I also wanted to ask you guys a question too about how this project came to you and what made you say, I have to do this project.
Okay, I went first last time.
So Christine, it's your turn.
Score, but let's see. I was approached to interview for the job, and at the time I was kind of on a TV directing trajectory, and like kind of done with TV. I'd done a bunch of TV movies, and I thought, oh, let me go this way, you know? And then when I was approached about the Clark Sisters movie, again, this goes back to my desire to tell stories about us. Mm-hmm. And with the added caveat of the specificity of people from Detroit, because I'm from Detroit.
You're from Detroit.
I just thought, oh my gosh, I have to do this. You know, I'm serious. I mean, that was like, nobody's going to be able to do this like I can do it. You know, I'm seriously, I thought that. I'm like, and secondly, I thought in the most humble way that I can say this, I thought I could add value to the legacy of the Clark sisters and their story.
Right.
Only in the way that a person like myself could. And that person is someone who has a profound love and honor and respect for my elders, and for Black women particularly, who have paved the way for people like us to be here and doing what we're doing. So I kind of took it on as an act of profound and deep service to my community of people like the Clark sisters, who I love and who I value in so many ways, in a spiritual sense. Their music is deeply embedded into the psyche of Black culture.
Yes.
And Blackness and spirituality in ways that I deeply resonate with. And so I just thought, I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but I was like, okay, God wants me to do this. And I'm not saying God talks to me. I don't know. I felt deeply compelled to put myself out there to get this job, you know? So.
Well, and also the thing with adding value, and I love you both because you're both so humble, and I want to go to Aujanue, but I have to touch on this. So there's a specific reference about Detroit, or something that, what do you call them? Detroitians will love, like
pop is you know, I'm from the Midwest, we call it pop. And they donated, you know, everything for product placement. Mm-hmm. And a little thing that I added, there's a scene early on where Maddie Moss Clark wakes up early in the morning to make her kids rehearse. And I set the clock, the time for 313 or 313.
Oh, okay.
Which is the area code for Detroit. So,
go ahead, girl.
I mean, only I would know that, and other people from Detroit. But I just made sure to set the clock for that, because that was like my wink out to my peeps from Detroit.
That's so, I didn't know that.
That's so
But
good.
you know what? See, those are the details that a director brings, and where I want to get into some of more of that good stuff. But what about you, Aujanue? What I mean, because I heard that when, and I was looking at that tape, that when that Christine shared, when the Clark sisters saw you playing their mother, they cried.
Well, I think they're criers. I think they cry a lot. So, you know, but I mean, imagine you walking onto a set. I mean, and someone is telling your life story. I mean, that's just overwhelming. And both of you can attest to this. The reverence that they have for their mother is something that I think we have that as Black folks, period. I think we just have that. But she figures larger to them more than, I guess, as a matriarch or someone that's maternal or their mother. They see her as someone who figured heavily into the significance of the Kojic tradition, you know, and
because women even held roles like that in the traditional Black church, where she was the national director of choirs, you know.
Exactly.
International.
Yeah. So when they do interviews, you know, first thing they talk about is their mother. To this day, they do that, you know. So just knowing how deeply that is for them, and then, you know, they come on a set and there's a chick that's gonna do it. There she is, you know. So I believe that they were, you know, that was overwhelming for them.
Yeah. So when the project first came to you, just because of who Dr. Mattie Moss Clark is and what she represents, especially when we think about the Kojic Church, one of the biggest Black denominations in the world, and this little known figure, this woman who held such a powerful role as the international director of music and choirs for the church, was it something where you were just like, I have to play this part? Like, how did the project come to you, and what was your response?
Well, I got a letter one night. I think it was a Thursday night, middle of the night, when I was in New York working on something, and I screamed. I ran from my place where I was staying. It was very small, but I ran the length of it down, and then I had to look at it again, and then I had to look at it again. And actually, it said that they offered me the role of Jackie. And I was like, why would they want me to play Jackie? And I didn't care. I was like, I don't care. I just want to be in it. But then I've got clarification, and then it was, you know, to play Dr. Mattie. And, you know, I had naysayers in my life about it.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, because they don't know her. They don't know her. You know what I'm saying? But I know her. And the person whose opinion meant the most to me, who was not feeling very well at the time, she was so excited and was barely verbal, but was calling another family member to tell her that they want Aujanue to play the Clark Sisters movie. And she could barely, you know, this family member, she could barely talk. And I was like, okay, this is what I knew it already, that I was gonna do it if they paid me $5. I was just going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, there are people, you know, my agents, I'll be specific.
What, you know, the downside, that's interesting. I'm sure our viewers would love to know that. Like, what could be?
Yeah, because you are funny with your tea sipping. No, because I think all of you know what I'm talking about. You have to, this doesn't just happen with agents and managers. It happens in any situation where you have to explain the significance of Black culture.
Yeah.
You have to educate people about who we are, our value. Meanwhile, those same institutions, those same individuals are using our culture to do what they do.
Yeah.
But we always end up in these moments of, don't you know who we are? Do you know what I'm saying? That's so, I could say that, oh, you know, my agents didn't get it, my manager didn't get it, blah, 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 blah. But it's a bigger question than that, you know? Right?
Thank you for pointing that out, because, you know, what a lot of people don't know, and I agree with you, it's like we're educating the world to these treasures, and the world at large may not know who the Clark sisters are and Dr. Maddie Moss Clark. There are a lot of fans and a lot of people who know them, but we have to educate even a new generation. And so even when you think of people like Beyonce, Mary J. Blige, all of these contemporary like R&B and kind of pop singers will go back and say, wow, I was listening to the Clark sisters. You know, I knew about Dr. Maddie Moss Clark, and we know that. But mainstream, larger culture, like you said, doesn't know it. So thank you for pointing that out. You know what, I want to ask this. How did it feel being a native of Detroit and shooting in Toronto for Detroit? For you as the director, for everyone to know, the director creates the vision of the film. The director is the captain of the ship. The director is the one who talks to the camera person, the lighting person, the set design person, every single person that's a part of the production, and tells them what her vision is and how to execute that vision. So I'm very interested to know, particularly because this would be so close to you being from Detroit, how did you manage that whole thing of shooting in Toronto, cheating for Detroit, and how did that affect you?
First of all, I think there should be a t-shirt created with "You might." Like that's gonna be a new thing. Mark my words.
You might.
Yes. Well, ideally, and the Clark sisters too, they really thought that this could be shot in Detroit.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there are the constraints of production and, you know, the incessant tax credit chasing brings us to Canada. So in my mind, we had so many scenes to cover and so many scenes indoors that I had a plan to incorporate Detroit with second unit shooting with exterior shots of Detroit. So my goals were grandiose, I think, and in my humble opinion, very manageable. However, I think there's so much story to tell that part of it kind of got thrown to the wayside. The authenticity of Detroit being a character. I'm a big fan of making locations a character.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's fluid storytelling, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes you're managing chaos, you know, they call production organized chaos. And you have to deal with the variables that you're given and maximize them, you know? So I think we had enough on our plates, like to get through production with the amount of time that we had. So I think Detroit has to come out through what is presented vis-a-vis performance, singing, whatever interior textures that I was afforded the opportunity to convey, and through some placing of some Better Made chips and Faygo.
Yeah. And by the way, let me just say that when I believe, and this is me stepping outside, I know I wrote it and I know that I love you sisters, but it is a beautiful film. It is a beautiful, lush, I mean, as someone who studies films and loves to look at the aesthetic, the textures, the color, the lighting, the way that you captured the performances. It's just beautiful. Maybe for some of our potential actors or future actors who might be listening, like, what is your methodology? Are you a method actor? When the cameras were off, were you still Dr. Maddie Moss Clark? Or, what's your approach to embodying and bringing your character into reality?
I start from the outside. I start from the outside in.
Wow.
I try to find things about whoever I'm playing that I can dip into no matter what the words are and no matter what I'm personally feeling.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like if I'm having a bad day, or if like my cycle is on, I got the cramps or whatever, like these are the things that I can hinge on to, that I can hold on to, that I can drop into. So no matter what is going on with me internally, I can grasp those things and still believe what I'm doing. And that's the pleasure, or the not pleasure. It was a pleasure because I had a great time doing it. But the privilege of playing someone like Dr. Maddie is that even though she's inimitable, there are things about her that you can in some way kind of act like. You know what I mean? Like you can mimic in a way. One of the things is that she was Southern. She's from Alabama. She lived in Detroit, but she's from Alabama. And when she talked to her girls, when she was in the church, she called upon all those Southern traditions.
I felt that.
Yeah.
I felt that from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was something that I could fall into. So no matter what I was saying, I could fall into that. I could fall into that. So that's what I mean by, and also the glasses, so, and her hair, like she had that iconic bun in the back, and I would struggle when we had this wonderful hair person. Her name was Ethelene, right? Christine, her name was Ethelene. And she's this really sweet lady, this really sweet Canadian lady. And she was wonderful with the hair, but she wanted to put me in all these wigs and they were great. But I had to tell her, I said, no, Miss Ethelene, I need to be in that bun. Because, you know what I mean? Because when I looked in the mirror, I'm like, that's Dr. Maddie. When I was wearing these other wigs, I struggled more to believe myself. So I really worked from the outside in.
And this is another thing Aujanue did. Like, I think when the hair thing was happening, she pulled me to the side. She said, come here, can I talk to you for a second? And she was like, I don't really know about all these wigs, right? And then, like, look, she could have easily said, I'm not going to do these wigs. She didn't say that. She was like, what do you think if we just do the bun and just use my natural hair, And I'm like, that's what you want to do? I think that's a great choice, And like, she's so good about articulating what she needs to do her job. This Aunjanue Ellis, I want to block for her, and I want to make sure she has the space, to do what she does. And I felt in many ways, like on day one, I'm like, oh, she ain't playing, right? So she came to work, and I kind of figured her methodology out in a way that I hope I serviced, and then the rest of it is just collaborating and working together to just elevate the storytelling with as much creativity and nuance that we could muster within the confines that we're given,
I also want to ask Christine, because you made a specific choice to cast singers who you could direct to act as the Clark sisters, as Jackie, Denise, Dorinda, Twinkie, Dorinda, and Karen. I go in order of age.
All of them were singers initially.
They were all singers, rather than actors who maybe could lip sync, or actors who you could. What was that choice like, and how do you feel about that choice?
I mean, it was a gut choice, and sometimes you do that. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're not. I felt in this scenario, it was the right gut choice to have real vocalists to play the sisters. And I know it works for other movies. It just didn't feel right for the Clark sisters. So if nothing else, that was something that I was adamant about. There's some things I wish I could have tweaked, but I think what you hear is a testament to how profound the Clark sisters are and how worthy they are of this kind of approach to their singing and their storytelling.
Now, there was one person whose voice was dubbed by someone else, and I don't know if I can say it, but was it Dorinda?
Yeah, it was Dorinda.
So it was Dorinda that was singing for Dr. Maddie Moss Clark. So Dorinda.
It's funny. I was gonna make Aujanue a singer. I was like, I think when before we had officially met, I was like, Aujanue, I want you to sing a song and send it to me, okay? And I don't know. She did it. She's so obedient. I love that. Here's the thing. When the Clark sisters came to Toronto and, they had to do some work with Donna Lawrence. And I kind of, on a sneak tip, I was like, can you get Dorinda to lay down the vocals for this song? Donald, being the servant leader that he was, I'm like, this is what I need. So that then Aujanue can dub her voice. And I just felt that was my little wink to Dr. Maddie Moss Clark. Like, let's get her voice in there. And who does that best is Dorinda. And that's what Ronnie told me. Ronnie, who's one of the producers, he's like, Dorinda sounds just like Dr.
Yeah, I think that's just.
And I was like, light bulb, let's get her to do that. And I just feel like that's a special touch.
Yeah.
And Aujanue, I know you did your homework and you figured out how to lip sync it. And I think it's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful moment.
It really is. And also knowing that a daughter gets to make that tribute to her mother.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you guys this. What's your favorite Clark sisters song?
I'm going to say mine quickly because I think Aujanue has a great answer to hers that she'll expound upon. But mine is Praying Spirit. Camille, in your version, did you have Praying Spirit in the script?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually had it. It was kind of a montage. It was over some things that were going on. Yeah.
So I remember when I was interviewing for the job, and this is something that I do a lot as a director. Like I might have listened to Praying Spirit like 500 times.
Ooh.
Like before my interview. I don't know. I just believe that it gets into you. It's a spiritual thing that we're doing. It's not just painting by numbers or you stand here now you say this. Like I'm deeply emotionally attached to storytelling in a way where if I don't feel it, I don't believe it. So I'm always seeking that out. If I'm moved, it works. Having the background of those sisters always consistent in my heart and my psyche was very important, I believe, on some level of maintaining the truth in storytelling when directing this film.
Well, I want people to understand that the Clark sisters are one of the most important figures in American music, period. And they contributed to gospel music never being the same. And gospel and blues are the root music of American music. Mm-hmm. So they are responsible for changing American music as we know it. And I believe that, I know that to be the case. Anyway, for me, Endow Me is my favorite. And I love It Overflows, which is what Twinkie and Dr. Maddie, they sing that together. And it's an incredible performance. Twinkie Clark plays the piano like nobody I've heard on that song. It's ridiculous. She destroys the keys. like the piano probably broke down after she got through playing that song. I mean, they sound incredible. It's a wonderful, it's fantastic. And then I want to speak to what you were talking about with Is My Living in Vain? And I'm glad you said what you said, because for Twinkie Clark to write that song when she wrote that song was such an act of womanism. I cannot say that enough, because she wrote it in an environment with the mother that she had, and in a culture, in an environment that insisted that women behave a certain way.
Right. Yeah.
That insisted that women, yes, give all you can to the church, but be quiet. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Don't be fully yourself. Give us all of you, but you can't be fully yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, this is your place. This is the place that you have to take. But we want you to give everything you have, but you can only occupy this kind of space. And she wrote that song during that time and in that culture. For her to do that was one of the most revolutionary things a Black woman has ever done. And we come from the Harriet Tubmans. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But that musically was one of the most revolutionary things that any Black woman has ever done. And what you spoke to is something that my friend and I were talking about this while I was shooting the movie. I said, this is the existential expression of women who are in the church. But the other day I wrote her, I was like, nah, this is the existential expression of being a Black woman, period. And that's why I'm so glad you said what you said, because those lyrics speak to a Black woman's existence on this planet. Is my living in vain? Am I wasting my time? Can the clock, those lyrics are so, they are timeless. And I hope one of these days that Black women don't have to have those testimonies. I pray for that day. But right now, it is as current as it was when she wrote it. And I want to tell her, I wish I could say to her, tell her this. Do you know what I mean? That song that she wrote speaks to Black women in a way that I think is unmatched by any speech I've ever heard given by a Black woman. I think it matches that. Like the core of what that song is about is the essential nature of being a Black woman in this country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Christine and I were actually having a dialogue about this morning when we were talking about Rashomon, actually. There's a woman character in the film, and I was talking about
Rashomon, just for our audience, just about the original Kurosawa Rashomon Japanese film. Okay.
Yeah. And so we had a discussion about space that women take on camera, on screen, and for me, it's not enough to just have the space. It's like how that space is occupied. Mm-hmm. Because we can be presented in these movies and these television shows, and even though we are on camera a lot, how do we use that space? Are we using that space to continue how we have been, our limited portrayals, but we do it, but we just on camera more? What I mean? So it's not enough for us to have space. It's not enough for us to have representation. And the extension of that is, so if we have representation, and then we are allowed to have this space, take up this space in celluloid, right? But how do we use that space? And I think that's the next question. How do we use that space? Even when everything is right? We got Black women writers, we got Black directors, we got Black women actors. How are we taking that opportunity and using what we have and maximizing it?
are we taking that opportunity? And it's not an opportunity. First of all, it's not an opportunity, because this is what we should have, period. And the fact that we don't is wrong. So how are we taking these moments that we have, these events, these movies, these television shows, you know, what are we doing with them when we do it?
Thank you. That's really powerful. And by the way, just for our viewers, I want to say that with the Clark Sisters, First Ladies of Gospel, all of the above the line talent, the writers, Sylvia Jones and myself, Black women, the producers, Black women, lead actresses, obviously Black women, and the director, Black woman. So that's something to pause for a moment and say, wow, it's an achievement. But I like what you were saying. It's not just occupying the space. How are we occupying the space, or how is the space being occupied? And that's really important, very important. And I'm going to hold on to that for myself, because I want to continue to think about that. And what about you, Christine?
So my favorite Twinkie Clark song is My Soul Loves Jesus.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like, it's the last song on her album. It doesn't matter. It just My Soul Loves Jesus. And just recently, I happened to play that song because I didn't listen. I listened for it for a whole year since we were shooting, because that was my shooting song, right? Mm-hmm. And it just took me a while to be able to listen to the music again, because, you know, you compartmentalize, you know? And then so it just kind of came up on my phone, and when I listened to it, it just took me back to that space, and I was there, and it is just so powerful. Anyway, it's a beautiful song, but there's power in it in a way that is personal. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, so as a storyteller, I don't make Black movies. I don't make women movies per se. I make human stories. I happen to be a person of color. I'm a Black woman. I'm half Asian too. But what has always challenged me as a storyteller is to tell stories that show humanity that is embodied in people who happen to look like us. And what's frustrating to me is that I don't feel that people who look like us get the same amount of opportunities or stories to do that. And I'm part of the solution, you know? I don't lack for stories to tell. In fact, they ooze out of me nonstop, right? So that's always been my goal is when I landed in Detroit and I saw all these people, beautiful, complex, funny, crazy, compromised, sneaky, you know, endearing, reverent, you know, all these different personalities and colors and textures. I just saw like tools to play with, you know, and I apply that to storytelling, you know, they just happen to look like us. I just don't think humanity is specific in terms of our race and ethnicity, but I want to see stories with and about us in ways where we explore and occupy those spaces that Aunjanue was talking about in ways that are satisfying to us.
Say something. I want to say something about Christine. I want to say that I think that I think she's one of the she's the most fearless director that I've ever worked with. Mm-hmm. And like, she's crazy. And I love that. I love that about her, you know? And I love that about her, because I'm crazy, you know? But I got to be crazy because she was crazy. You know what I mean? Because she's a risk taker. And she put her body, her soul, her reputation, all of that on the line in service of seeing whatever people see next Saturday night, whether they like it, whether they love it. I hope they fall somewhere in between, something.
Yeah.
What's good in it, I know, is because of how fearless Christine Swanson is. And I want the world to know that. And I think that this speaks to your question, Camille, is that when we do occupy those spaces, whether we're on screen or off screen, to operate in fear, I believe is an abomination, is an absolute abomination. If we can write a script, if we can get behind, when we are writing our scripts, when we are behind the cameras, when we are in front of the cameras, like we have to be fearless. We have to be, or we let down those people we've been talking about this whole conversation, which is the elders, right? All of that stuff. So I think, like, I think that's also a part of the equation. It's like when we do get in those spaces, we are obligated to operate without fear. And I think Christine did that.
Here's the thing: if I'm fearless, I meet who's fearless. What is possible? What is impossible? So I've been in spaces as a director where everybody is scared of losing their jobs.
Child.
I understand that because people have mouths to feed. And I myself have been in that situation where, you make choices, there are consequences for those choices. Again, that's an industry approach. The creative approach is to operate in a fearless atmosphere within yourself. Yeah. And then you can see what's possible from yourself. Our fearlessness is a magnet. And those who possess it will just stick to you, right? Yeah. And as the Bible teaches, two is better than one, So working with other fearless people is like a dream come true. And I thought, I felt that in my collaboration with Aujanue, and I think we just pushed each other to see how far we can push this train. And I think we pushed it off the tracks and then some, but no regrets. If I look back and I regret like not doing something because I was scared, then stay home.
Stay at the house.
Go hard or go home.
I think what you're saying when you're saying the go hard or go home, or the fearlessness, and this goes back to the detail, there's something about artists, when we really care about our art, it can't be mediocre. I feel like you see it in every frame of the film.
Well, in the spirit of Maddie Moss Clark, do you think she settled for mediocrity?
That's that spirit. Yep. Maddie wasn't having it. Dr. Maddie Moss Clark wasn't having it.
How do we show up and aim low? It's just you cannot do that. Yeah. And you cannot do that when you're talking about real women who are living,
Yeah.
And we doing a movie about their mama too,
And so I think that's the thing of doing a biopic, and some of the considerations that one has to do when they're doing someone's real life is, especially if they're living, is the authenticity to that representation of who they are. And that's so important. And I think we probably all really had that weight on us, so, but just being mindful of our time. I have one last question. It's kind of a two-parter, and I'll go after you guys. It's just, what's your favorite scene in the film? Maybe you don't have one, maybe you do, or a scene that really spoke to you, and what do you hope that audiences will take away? What are you hoping that fans or audiences may take away from seeing the Clark sisters, the First Ladies of Gospel?
I love every scene where the girls are performing and singing. It's because it's real art. It's a real art form that's emanating in real time, because when I recorded it, they were singing live. Yeah. And it's almost like being in church, you know? It felt like a spiritual experience when those girls were performing. And it was just, we were, everybody, crew, myself, we were just awestruck with the sense of reverence for not just only their talent that they're using as gifts to give to the storytelling, but just as an art form in and of itself. Gospel music, it reaches deep into our souls and our spirits in ways that was replicated in friggin' Toronto, Canada. And we had crew people crying because they were so moved by the music, and they were also moved by performance. So, which leads me to a couple of scenes that I just was just mesmerized by. Was one is the hospital scene with the girls surrounding their mother as, you know, she's, you know, in her last days, and the scene where Maddie and Twinkie have to part ways.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that, okay, listen, if those girls singing felt like church, those two scenes felt like church as well to me, because it reached me. What was happening so affected me on a visceral level. I equate that to a church experience. Mm-hmm. And again, it wasn't just me. I'm watching these scenes unfolding in front of me, and by the time I yell cut, the whole crew is like in tears. You know, I'm like, Aujanue, you good? Yeah, let me go again. And I'm like, crew, are y'all okay? And they're like, can we get a minute? You know, it's like the effect that it had, that they had to regroup to get ready to do another take, because it was so affecting. That's the goal, you know?
I would agree that when they were singing, like, that was fun. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to do the job, because I was like, I go to work and hear Clark Sisters music every day, you know? So I was like, I want that job. So yeah, it was when I, you know, and hearing Kiera and Christina and Angela and Shalea, I mean, they were ripping the plaster off the walls, you know? So I was consumed by that. And you know, I loved every minute of it. And you know, Christine, to her credit again, you know, she just let me play. You know, she let me play. And that's what I think any actor who sees this, you know, and I hope any director who sees this outside of Christine, you know, when you let an actor just let them play, you know, just take the bars off them, take the chains off them, and let them try. It may not work. It may not end up in the final edit, you know, but then you feel free, you feel liberated, and you will often be surprised by what can happen. And so having the opportunity to do that was fun for me.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I add this? Like, one of my greatest pleasures in life as a director is discovering new talent. And new meaning not known to the maybe movie world. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is the inclusion of the actress who played Dorinda. Her name is Shalea Frazier. And I just knew that she had a phenomenal voice, and she kind of sort of looked like Dorinda. And in my imagination, I thought, oh, she can be Dorinda. And I felt that way also about Kiera. Kiera was trying to audition to play Denise, because Kiera in real life is probably used to hiding, very much like in the way that her mother's character did in the movie. So you're seeing like life imitating art. And in my first meeting with Kiera, I was like, no, I think you're Karen. I really think you're Karen. And I want you to wrap your mind behind that. So those two young ladies really surprised me in ways that I hadn't anticipated. But what they contributed in terms of their musicianship really elevated the storytelling in ways that I had hoped. And, I don't know if they're going to go on and be actors in life, but in terms of what they contributed, I take a lot of pride in that, as if they were my own kids. So that's that's fun for me as a director.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you both so much for sharing and just us having this talk today. I feel like...
I also say something, Camille.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for what you did with this script. Thank you. You have been on this journey for 15 freaking years. My God, woman. Come on, somebody.
Well, it's interesting because the thing, and I was asking you all, my personal connection, like I said, I wasn't really familiar with the Clark sisters when I came in, but I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Compton, and my dad was the mayor of Compton. And when my dad died of cancer, my brother was the mayor, and then my brother became a congressman. But my mother, Martha Tucker, has the distinction of having 4 strong kids that are all kind of, we laugh because we're all not leaders, but we're all pushing in our own way. And I don't know how she's done it, but one thing I remember my mother always telling me when we were younger, she was like, I don't have favorites. And that what really spoke to me, because sometimes you see in the brokenness of families, the favorite thing is a big thing. And I just remembered how she said, each of you have a different special gift, and I want to nurture that gift. And I felt that as the spirit of Dr. Maddie Moss Clark. In each of her daughters, she saw the gift, the different gifts that they had. And I could relate so much to what it feels like when you're in a family where somebody's out doing this and somebody's out doing, and somebody's, it feels like somebody's always doing something. And where do you find your own voice? That's why that motif of the family blend was very important to me, because I think singularly we know that we're not really anything without those around us who we love and who love us unconditionally. And so I feel like the idea of God, the love of God and family being the glue, is what was important to me about this film. And I hope that that's what people kind of take away, however they see it, is that, we can go through a lot in life, but we still have to have that well to return back to.
Well, Camille, what I would love to say about what I think you did communicate really well was Maddie's individual relationship with each of her daughters that she expressed in a specific and special way. And that was, to me, beautifully translated by Aujanue and the young ladies playing the daughters. I believe each and every one of them had that special moment where that realization was acknowledged and understood. So the specificity of that was in the script relating to mother and every daughter in an individual way was really beautifully articulated. So good job on that.
Cool. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Again, this is Aunjanue Ellis, who plays Dr. Maddie Moss Clark in the Clark Sisters, the First Ladies of Gospel. Christine Swanson, who is the director of the film. And I am Camille Tucker. I'm one of the co-writers, and story by me as well, the Clark Sisters, the First Ladies of Gospel.
I think Aujanue is in like a reality show all by herself with the moving camera. Like,
and in addition to the reality show and the tease,
Thank you.
Part of this show today, but you ladies are amazing, and I pray that you will continue to be safe. Thank you, and see you later.
Bye, Aujanue.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.